Hello friends, my name is Marina. I'm the person behind Everything Marina Food blog. In this video, I want to show you what baking tools I'm using when I'm making macarons. I'm making macarons using French meringue, so these are tools based on French meringue. If you're going to be using Swiss meringue or Italian meringue, then your tools will be a little different. But this is my favorite tools and I have success making macarons with them and I just want to share with you. If you're ready, let's get started. You see on my table, that's all I use. And I just want to talk about each tool separately. First, very important tool, it's a mixer. I'm using KitchenAid. And to make macarons, we need whisk attachment. That's how we're going to be making French meringue. And we need a mixing bowl of stand mixer. I'm using glass one. I also have a metal one. I use glass one mostly when I'm taking videos for my YouTube or for my Instagram. I want my followers to see meringue, and when I'm going to be mixing macaronage, I want you to see the consistency of macaronage. That's why I'm using glass one. If you have metal, it's also will work. The most important, whisk and the mixing bowl should be clean and dry. If you made American buttercream in that mixing bowl, you need to wash it with the soap and hot water and let it dry and then clean with vinegar and paper towel. You also will see this later. But mixing bowl, whisk attachment to the mixer should be clean and dry. Important. And I will not stop to say how important it is to use all tools clean. Not just mixing bowl and whisk, but all tools. They should be clean, dry, and not broken, obviously. Mixing bowl, whisk attachment, and I'm using KitchenAid mixer. If you don't have KitchenAid mixer, if you want to use hand mixer, it also will work. But I will advise you to make not the full recipe, just half a recipe, and see how big is your mixing bowl that you're going to be using and how much you can actually fit macaronage in the mixing bowl, and how strong is your mixer, because you need to be whipping that egg whites not 5 minutes, I would say, longer. And if you're going to be holding that hand mixer, your hands probably going to get tired. So stand mixer, KitchenAid, that's what I'm using. And right now I'm just gonna put it on the side. I don't want to disturb this. Next, the first thing always what I'm doing when I'm making macarons, I'm measuring my ingredients. You need digital kitchen scale. All ingredients measure with a kitchen scale. You don't use cup measurement. Obviously, if you don't have, you can, but when making macarons, it's very important to measure ingredients correctly. Even like 5 or 6 grams can make a big difference. So kitchen scale. We also need mixing bowls, and I'm using just metal mixing bowls. They all the same size. And I'm using whisk, and then I have a sifter. I'm using usually the large one. Will be measuring my dry ingredients and that almond flour and powdered sugar, and I will be sifting that, and I'm using whisk. If you don't want to use whisk, you can use spatula or just your hand, but with the whisk it's always faster. And sometimes I use small sifter because if you need to sift, for example, powdered sugar for the decoration, or if you want to sift cocoa powder, for example, and you don't want to use the same sifter. So the small or large will work. 2 mixing bowls and whisk. I also want to say I sift my powdered sugar and almond flour together, and I sift sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes once. It all depends on ingredients, on the almond flour that I'm using, and I will be talking about this later in more details. But that's just a few tools that I'm using right away: kitchen scale and mixing bowls when I'm sifting ingredients. Next, this is very important tools that I'm going to be using. I am measuring bowls and measuring cup. That's where you can measure, for example, granulated white sugar and then add 2 egg whites, or maybe if you're using different flour or cocoa powder, I like to put everything separate in a mixing bowl. And they also glass and the clear plastic that you can see better. But if you have different mixing bowl, it's totally fine. Let's talk about spatulas. My favorite 2 spatulas that I'm using, and you've seen so many times in the video, it's this one. It's from Wilton. And another one, this one more professional, it's Rubbermaid. Why I like these 2 spatulas? First of all, they very strong spatulas, and when I'm macaronaging in a mixing bowl, you have to make sure that this part will not break in a spatula. Like this Wilton has, it's a silicone spatula, and it's very strong, and I made macarons many times with this spatula. It's not breaking that very easily. And you know, I broke so many spatulas, so that's why I would recommend just these 2. They're very strong and unbreakable. What not to use? Spatula like this, because you want to see the difference. The part of the spatula that we're using to macaronage is this part and that part. So there's 2 parts in a spatula, and this spatula doesn't have that part. So this is more for making eggs or steak moving. So this I would not recommend. This will be really perfect spatula. I just want you to see the difference. So we need 1 spatula. If we're separating macaronage, I would recommend you to use 2 spatulas. This way you always have one clean, and it just creates less trouble later. Next, we need piping bag. This is pastry bag, very strong. I will link all my tools below this video, what I'm using, and something unbreakable, really, something that is not gonna break so easily, and I'm using large pastry bag. We need round piping tips if we're making just classic macarons, and my favorite is Wilton 12, this one. I also use Wilton 1A and 2A. They all different round piping tips, but like I said, 12 is my favorite. But I just want you to show, it depends on a macaron shell size that you're going to be making, if you want to use smaller or larger. Something more smaller like 8 or 6 I would not recommend. It's even if you're making mini macarons, I would still use the same that I would make just a normal classic size. Pastry bag, round piping tip, and a few of my favorite tip that I'm always sharing with you. I'm using pitcher to hold my piping bag with the piping tip. This, if you don't have pitcher, for example, I would link this product from Amazon. They have, this is just a really plastic, but it helps you to hold the pastry bag. It's especially, I think that's how it's called. It's called pastry bag holder or something. But it's really good tool. I have this pitcher for many years and I refuse to throw it away. I can't find this. I don't know where I bought it. And oh, it's actually from IKEA. So if you see this in IKEA, I would recommend to buy this and hold the pastry bag. If you don't have, this will be also really good tool to buy. If you don't have any of this, just simple jar, tall jar, and you can hold the pastry bag and transfer your macaronage. Jar or even cup will work. Pastry bag, round piping tip, and then you place in a holder, and here it is. That's how you're going to be transferring macaronage into pastry bags. Moving those tools. Important tool that I always have questions, which baking mat I'm using, and I'm using Silpat Macarons baking mat. I would say this is professional baking mat, and it's kind of investment. It's not just a few dollars, but if you're planning to make macarons and maybe sell or making large amounts, I would highly recommend invest in this baking mats. They're really good, and I never had trouble with them when I bake macarons. Something more affordable from Amazon, this baking mat. I also gonna leave the link below. The difference, this is, I would say, more affordable. That means it's cheaper, but it's really good quality baking mat. And the difference, just the size of the template on a baking mat. You see this one has more macarons and this has less. The size is different. I just want to show you to compare, but by the quality they also different. Like when I'm touching with the hands, they different baking mats. Another one I have from Silpat, and I use this one not just for macarons, but when I bake some different desserts. This one doesn't have template like this one, but this is the same quality. It's just this made for macarons and this just a regular baking mat. The quality is the same. What I advise you to do, if you, for example, found this baking mat but you want to bake macarons, there is no template, right? What you can do? You can go on my website and print this free templates that I have. Like for example, for round one and for pumpkin. I have many different templates on my blog. You're welcome to print them out. They made for this format. You can print on the regular printer. It's A4 list. And what I usually do, I hope you guys gonna see this. You just simply place under baking mat and you're gonna pipe macarons. Then you just move and place on another side, or you just need to print 2 templates and use right away. And it's perfect for this baking mat. Important, when you're done piping, remove the template. Don't bake with this. One more thing, if you don't have template for macarons, but you have something like this, plain one, I want to use this baking mat. I would like to place this baking mat because I like the size of the macarons that is gonna come out, and I'm placing the plain one over, and then I'm piping macarons. See, this is your free template. For example, if you don't like baking mat, but you like the size of the macarons that's gonna come out. That's my another advice. If you, for example, found something less expensive and you like the size, just place under, pipe macaron shells, remove before baking, and you're good to go. I do not use any different baking mats because I have gas oven, and silk pot baking mat works really good in my oven. If you have electric oven, or maybe you're using professional oven to bake macaron shells, you need to test actually baking mats and see which one works better. Maybe it's gonna be Teflon or just different brand, but start with something that you have already and see if it works for you. Baking trays. I'm using Capelon and the size is 12-17. It's just a regular baking sheet pan that I buy in TJ Maxx, for example, or on Amazon, and they are really good. They fit with this baking mat like this, and it's perfect for home oven. I also seen the baking mats which are doubling and the baking sheet pan trays, so they made for professional ovens. But if you're a home baker, this is more than enough. The only thing I want to tell you about this baking sheet trays, maybe you need not just one or two, maybe you need like 6 of them or 4, because sometimes it depends on your oven. I'm doubling them, placing like this, and I'm turning around. It all depends on the oven and the temperature that you have in the oven. Another thing I want to tell you about pan, if you baking macarons, please just bake macarons in them. Don't make French fries or chicken in the same baking sheet tray, because it's gonna burn. And if you're using one temperature for macarons and then you're gonna place chicken or meat or vegetables, obviously your temperature that you're gonna be cooking, it's gonna be higher and it can burn. After 1-2 times of use, they're gonna burn. And when you're gonna be making macarons, it will affect. Trust me, I've seen so many times with mine where I was using for my home cooking meal and then for macarons, they burn so fast and they kind of getting greasy and oily, and I decided to purchase just for my macarons and keep them away from my home meals when I'm preparing for my family. So these are just for macarons. One more tool that I'm using to make macaron shells, it's those little cookie tool. They also available online. If you don't have them, you can use just a regular toothpick. It's when you bake macaron shells and you see any bubbles, you can pop the bubble using those tools. It's also good when you're making icing for cookies. That's only actually where I'm using them. They come in pack, and I'm also going to leave the link below. These are all my baking tools that I'm using when I'm making macarons, and the link to all these tools I will leave in the comments. If you don't have something, if you want to purchase, I'll tell you where to find. So thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and I would like to hear your opinion. Maybe you disagree, maybe something unnecessary tools, or maybe something else you're using. Just leave in the comments and we can talk. Thank you for watching, and happy baking!